Ever landed on a website and thought, wait, where's the menu? Where do I click? That's a bad navbar. And today, we're making sure you never build one of those. Hi, I'm Viskin, and in this tutorial, we're building a modern, responsive navigation bar using just HTML, CSS, and a sprinkle of JavaScript. No frameworks, no libraries, just clean code and good vibes. So, before we dive into the code, let's take a look at what we're building. The navigation bar adapts based on the screen size. On larger screens like laptops or desktops, all of your navigation links appear in a neat horizontal layout. But on smaller screens, like tablets or phones, most of the links will be hidden and replaced by a menu button. Clicking that menu button will trigger a sidebar that slides out from the right side. In it, we'll display our nav links vertically. And because the navbar and sidebar are two separate elements, you're completely free to customize the layout however you like. Search bars, drop-downs, login buttons, icons, or even a dancing red panda. All right, let's start coding. First things first, let's create a new file called index.html. Inside, we'll write a basic HTML structure with the doctype HTML declaration and the usual HTML, head, and body tags. I'll also open the website in the browser using the live server extension in VS Code, so we can see changes instantly. Now inside the body tag, let's add a nav element. Inside that, we'll place an unordered list. And inside that, we'll add several list items, each containing a navigation link. Let's use 5 example links for now. Blog, products, about, forum, and login. Each anchor will have a href placeholder, which you'll replace later with real URLs to your pages. If we check the browser now, we'll just see a basic bullet point list. Next, create a new file named style.css and link it in the head of your HTML using a link tag. Nice. Now it's time to style. We'll start with a few basic resets to get a clean foundation. Browsers like to apply their own default margins and padding, which is nice of them, but also really annoying. So let's wipe that out with this universal selector. Next, we'll make sure our layout stretches to fill the whole screen by setting the body min, height to 100 viewport. This ensures that our content always takes up at least the full height of the viewport, whether you're on a phone, tablet, or a 6K monitor that costs more than your rent. By the way, this is something I recommend doing every time you start a new web project. Now, I want our website to have a visually appealing background image, something that gives it a bit of personality. You can choose any image you like, but for this demonstration, I've already prepared an image called Weekend JPG. If you want to use the same one, I've dropped a link in the video description where you can download it for free. It's clean, high resolution, and most importantly, free, because we love free. All right, once you've got your image ready and saved into the same folder as your project, we'll use the background image CSS property to add it. In your CSS, go ahead and update your body selector like this. Of course, replace Weekend JPG with the name of your own image file if you're using something else, like cat coding in space JPG, or whatever makes you happy. Now if we open the browser, you'll see that the image appears. But it might look awkward, maybe stretched, tiled, or not centered. Let's fix that. Still inside the body selector, add the following. Here's what these do. Cover makes the image stretch just enough to fill the whole container without warping. No repeat stops the image from duplicating like it's in a hall of mirrors. And center makes sure the focus stays nicely aligned. With those 3 properties combined, your background image should look solid on any screen size. Lastly, let's set a font to give everything a clean look. I'm using Sego UI for this project, but feel free to use any font that matches your taste. Just stay away from Comic Sans, unless you're building a website for your dog. Then it's legally allowed. Add this to the body as well. And that's it. We now have a nice, full-screen background image and a modern font to work with. Now that we've laid the groundwork with our basic HTML and CSS setup, it's time to start styling the navigation bar. Let's begin by giving the nav bar a background color of white and applying a box shadow to give it a little depth, kind of like floating above the page instead of being glued to it.
Not a big piece.
Next, we'll style the UL element inside the navbar. This makes sure the list takes up the full width of its container.
Not a big piece.
And with Flexbox, we're aligning all the list items to the right and centering them vertically. If you're not familiar with Flexbox yet, don't worry, you don't need to master it today. But it's one of the most useful layout tools in CSS, so definitely check it out. Now let's move on to the list items themselves, navli. Each one represents a navigation link, so we'll give them a fixed height of 50 px. That gives our links a nice consistent size. And you may have noticed, we're not setting a height for the navbar or the UL. That's because we're letting the list items define the height naturally. It's like letting the content breathe on its own. Now let's style the anchor tags inside the list items. That's our actual clickable links.
Not a big piece.
Let's break that down quickly. Height. 100% ensures the link fills the full height of the list item. Padding gives the text some breathing room on the sides. Display, flex and align items. Center. Vertically center the text. Text decoration. None removes the default underline. And finally, color. Black keeps things clean and easy to read. Now let's add a hover effect to give the user some feedback. This adds a light gray background when the user hovers over a link, just enough to say, hey, this thing does something. All right, now there's one last detail before we make this responsive. We want the first list item, which is typically your logo, to stay on the left side of the navbar, while all the other links go to the right. To do that, we use the .first child selector and apply a margin trick. This pushes everything else to the right automatically. No complex positioning required. And that's it for the basic styling of our navigation bar. If you've made it this far, great job. This is the solid foundation that's going to help us build out the mobile sidebar next, so let's keep going. For this next step, we'll build the mobile sidebar, the version of the navbar that shows up when someone's browsing your site on a smaller screen, like a phone or tablet. To do that, we first go back to our index.html file. The sidebar is going to be almost identical to the navigation bar we just built. We're using the same list of links, but instead of displaying them horizontally, we want them stacked vertically from top to bottom. So here's the move. Copy the entire UL you created for the navbar and paste it above the original one. Give this new unordered list a class of sidebar. Now, if you open the browser, it's going to look weird. You'll see two navbars stacked on top of each other. That's okay, this is temporary. Next, let's style the sidebar in our CSS file. We want the sidebar to stay fixed to the right side of the screen, take up the full height of the screen, and sit on top of everything else. So here's the CSS you'll need. Now, we don't want this sidebar interfering with the layout or pushing anything around, so we're using position, fixed. That pins it to the top right corner and removes it from the normal document flow. All right, let's now display our links vertically inside the sidebar. We'll use Flexbox again, just with a different direction. Update the .sidebar selector like this. This tells the sidebar to stack everything top to bottom and align items to the top left of the panel. Now let's make sure each link inside the sidebar stretches the full width of the container. We'll select the li elements and anchor tags inside the sidebar. This avoids weird alignment issues and keeps the entire clickable area consistent across all links. Now for one final touch to make this sidebar look extra sleek, let's add a glass effect. Yes, that trendy blurry background style. We already have a solid white background, but to achieve the blur, we'll add some transparency and apply a backdrop filter. So back in your dot sidebar selector, replace the background color line with this. Here's what's happening. RGBA adds transparency to the white background. Backdrop filter, blur 10px, tells the browser to blur anything behind the sidebar. It's like looking through frosted glass. Feel free to tweak the blur amount to match your taste. Increase it if you want that fancy macOS look, or lower it if you want something subtle. And that's it. Now we have a mobile sidebar with a fixed position, clean vertical layout, full width links, a nice blurred glass effect. The design is ready. Now it's time to bring in the menu buttons so we can actually open and close this thing. Let's do that next. Now, you don't need to design these icons yourself. That would be torture. Instead, we'll get them for free from Google Fonts Icons. So, head over to fonts.google.com, icons, search for menu and close, and download the SVG versions of both. These are lightweight, scalable, and perfect for responsive design. Once you've downloaded the files, drag and drop them into your project folder. Somewhere next to your HTML and CSS files is just fine. Now, let's switch over to VS Code and get these icons into our HTML. First, open the SVG file for the menu icon. Inside, you'll see a whole block of SVG code. It looks a bit scary, but don't worry. It's just a visual made of math. Copy the entire SVG element. We'll paste it into our existing navbar. Not the sidebar, just the main top nav. At the very end of the unordered list, add a new li, and inside that, a tag. Then paste your SVG code inside the A tag, just like this. Once that's in place, refresh your browser and ta-da! You should see your menu icon appear. Except, it's probably still hiding. That's because our sidebar is sitting right on top of it like an overprotective parent. Let's fix that. Jump into your CSS where we styled the dot sidebar and temporarily set. Now the sidebar is hidden by default, which reveals the menu icon in the top navbar, just like it should be. At this point, the icon might look huge. That's okay. Let's scale it down. You can either modify the width and height directly in the SVG tag or style it via CSS. I recommend setting it to 26px, like this. If you want to change the icon color, you can use the fill attribute directly inside the SVG, or control it with CSS by targeting SVG path elements. For now, black works just fine. And that's it. We've placed our menu icon, styled it, and made sure it's visible on the page. Next up, it's time to make it actually do something with a little help from JavaScript. Let's dive into that next. We're going to use JavaScript to open the sidebar when the menu icon is clicked, and close it again when the X icon is clicked. Let's start with the menu icon. In your HTML, go to the li element that contains the menu SVG, and add an onClick attribute directly to it. Like this. Make sure you type it exactly like that. No quotation marks inside the function name. And yes, capitalization matters. This is JavaScript. It's picky. Now we need to define what that function does. Scroll down to the very bottom of your HTML file, just before the closing body tag, and add a script block. This is where we'll write our JavaScript. Inside that script tag, define the show sidebar function like this. Let's break that down real quick. First, we use document.querySelector to grab the sidebar element, just like how you'd select something in CSS. Then we change its style. Display eFlex, which brings it back to life on the page. Remember, we had it set to display, none earlier to keep it hidden by default. Now we're flipping that switch. And that's it. Your menu icon is now officially a button. When you click it, the sidebar slides into view. Okay, now let's do the same for the close icon, aka the big ol' X. Start by copying the SVG for the close icon and pasting it inside the first list item of the sidebar. That'll be its topmost item. We don't need the logo in the sidebar. It's already sitting in the main navbar, doing its thing. Once you've added the close icon, go ahead and set its width and height to 26px, just like we did for the menu icon. Consistency is classy. Now, we give that list item an onClick function as well. This one will call a function called hideSidebar. Head back to your script tag, and right below your show sidebar function, add this. Boom! Now the X icon hides the sidebar again. So what we've got is, menu icon shows the sidebar. close icon hides the sidebar. And with that, the interactive part of our responsive navbar is fully working. Let's move on to the final step and make everything responsive with CSS media queries. So we've got a working navbar and a beautiful sidebar. Now it's time to make it responsive, meaning it adapts to different screen sizes like phones, tablets, or even that one weird monitor you've had since 2007. We only want the sidebar to show up when users are on smaller screens. On larger screens, we'll show the full set of navigation links. So, at the bottom of your CSS file, we'll create a media query. We'll start by targeting screens that are 800 pixels or smaller, like this. What this does is simple. Any element with the class hide on mobile will be hidden on screens smaller than 800px. Now back in your HTML, give all your regular navbar links the class hide on mobile, but leave the logo visible. You want people to know where they are, even on mobile. Trust me. So your HTML might look like this. With this setup, when you resize the browser or use the mobile preview in DevTools, all the links disappear, except the logo and menu icon. Clicking the icon brings in your sidebar. Pretty slick, right? But wait, we're not done yet. Let's make one last media query, this time for very small screens, like phones under 400 pixels wide. We'll make the sidebar take up 100% of the screen width on those devices, like this. This gives a nice full screen sidebar for smaller smartphones, and it's totally up to you if you want to tweak that width based on your design. The menu button, which is our hamburger icon, will only show up on those small screens. By default, the menu button should be hidden, so above the media query, make sure you write this. And that's it! You've just built a fully responsive navbar using nothing but HTML, CSS, and a sprinkle of JavaScript. No frameworks, no libraries, no tiers, just clean code. It works on all screen sizes, looks modern, and gives your users a smooth navigation experience. If you enjoyed this video, learned something new, or at least didn't fall asleep, consider giving it a like and subscribing for more coding tutorials like this. Useful, clean, and hopefully a little fun. This was Viscon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.